A few weeks ago, I covered one of the most controversial coaching decisions of the 2010s, when I analyzed Doug Marrone running out the clock in the first half of the AFC Championship with a 4-point lead. You can check that out in the upper right corner or in the description if you want to see that. Because of the circumstances involved, I had no problem with the Jags simply holding onto the ball and playing for the lead. Now between that and the other episodes of dumb decisions that I've made on the channel, where I criticize teams for being stupidly aggressive, you might think that my approach to the game is to be very safe, take no chances, and build around a philosophy of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. On the contrary, I have no problem with teams playing aggressively. There's just a time and a place to do it. Calling a fake field goal from the 25-yard line as the last play of the half, knowing that the clock will run out no matter what, is stupid. Calling a fake punt in your own end zone where the intended receiver is a guy you literally just signed that week and had no idea what the call was, is stupid. And vice versa, I have a problem with teams playing conservatively. I have a problem when teams in the second half kick the extra point to go up 8 instead of trying to make it a 2-score game and go for the 2-point conversion. I have a problem with calling draw plays on 2nd and 10. And I have a problem when teams try and run out the clock for seemingly no reason. Want to see an example of that? Want to see an example of when you shouldn't go into the half by running out the clock? Here's the scene. It's January 12, 2003, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are hosting the San Francisco 49ers in this NFC Divisional game. The winner moves on to the NFC Championship to take on the Philadelphia Eagles in what will be the final game at Veterans Stadium. Tampa Bay's got one of the greatest defenses of all time, led by a slew of guys who are either Hall of Famers or are borderline. Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, Simeon Rice, Rondé Barber, John Lynch, you name it, this team had talent. This might be their best shot ever to make it to their first Super Bowl. They've got to get past the San Francisco 49ers, who are coming off of one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history. Down 38-22 to the New York Giants at the start of the fourth quarter, the 49ers wound up winning it 39-38. They may have gotten away with a penalty at the end, but that's besides the point. Would the 49ers keep their momentum up and catch Tampa Bay somewhat rusty after their bye week? Or would Tampa show why they were one of the best teams in football? It would be the latter. The first half was brutal, as the 49ers allowed 4 touchdowns. Mike Allstott's 2-yard touchdown put Tampa Bay up 7-0. A 20-yard reception by Joe Jaravicius from Brad Johnson put Tampa up 14-3. Brad Johnson's second touchdown pass of the day, this time to Ricky Dudley, put Tampa up 21-6. And with roughly 1 minute left in the half, Mike Allstott scored for the second time, punching it in again from 2 yards out to make it a 28-6 game. Obviously, things are not great right now for San Francisco, especially after turning it over on their previous 2 possessions. But a solid kickoff return by Vinny Sutherland sets them up at the 31-yard line. They've got 2 timeouts. They get the ball to start the second half. You get a score here, and it's still somewhat of a ball game. Okay, Steve Mariucci, let's see what you draw up to try and get some points on the board.
From their own 32, keeping it on the ground, Harrison Hurst with a nice run. They mark him down right at the 40, a gain of 9.
Well, that's interesting. You're down 22 and you're not going to come out and fire it around a little bit?
Well, there was even some indecision on Jeff Garcia's part as to whether or not they were going to huddle, go to the line of scrimmage, or even call timeout. Not something that was well thought out on the sideline.
Wow, I don't believe this.
This is hard to believe.
I do not believe this.
The ball's at the 40. You have 2 timeouts left and you're packing it in for the half.
Not when you're down 28-6.
Wow.
I agree. I don't understand this at all.
And another left for that Tampa Bay defense, because in essence, the 49ers are heading off the field saying, you know what, we're calling time.
Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Now before I go any further, I just want to say a special thanks to all of our Patreon members for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated, and if you want to join the community, click the link in the description below to see how you can become a member of Patreon today. As for this play, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something that looked bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something that looked awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we are taking a look at the mind of Steve Mariucci. As it turns out, this would be Mariucci's final game with the 49ers, as Jed York fired him a few days after this one. And man, this was quite the way to go out. So with that being said, let's take a look at why running out the clock down by 22 points with 2 timeouts near midfield is a bad idea. First off, and this should go without saying, This is drastically different from what Doug Marrone did 15 years later at the AFC Championship. The Jaguars were up by 4, they didn't have great field position, and were 10-0 that season going into halftime with the lead. The 49ers, on the other hand, were down by 22 points. You're not even going to try and score down by 3 possessions when you're near midfield? The first thing I immediately did was look and see if there was any chance whatsoever the 49ers had of winning this game after doing this, based off of history. To start off, I looked at every team that was down by 22 points or more in a playoff game on the road. At the time, there were 23 teams who trailed by 22 points or more on the road in a playoff game. You want to know the last time a team won a game under those circumstances? That's odd. I was having trouble finding the footage. Okay, I found it. Let's try this again. You want to know how many times a team won a game under these circumstances?
Well, it's 0. That means it's nothing. 0 is nothing. Zip, nada.
That's right. 0. It had never happened before. Instead of trying to score, Steve Mariucci was completely content with going into the half under a scenario where no team had ever won a game before. But in fairness, that stat is a bit specific. So I expanded that to any playoff game, whether it was at home, on the road, or at a neutral site. For this one, it had happened 28 times before. Of these 28 instances, a comeback in a playoff game from down 22 or more points at the half had only occurred once. As you might have guessed, that was the Bills against the Oilers during the wildcard round of the 1992 season. 1 out of 28. It's happened 3.6% of the time. These are great odds that Mariucci is deciding to play with here. And finally with this stat, I expanded it to any game. It could be regular season or postseason. How many times at this point in history had a team come from behind down by 22 or more points at the half? 7 times in 558 attempts. A grand total of 1.3% of the time had a team been down by 22 points at halftime and come back to win the game. Steve Mariucci thought that playing these odds was better than taking a gamble by trying to score some points. There are plenty of other reasons why this decision was awful. We are only scratching the surface. So let's take a look at number 2. How many times did Steve Mariucci flip-flop on his decision? Take this play when the Buccaneers are up 21-6. It's first and goal with 1:10 left, and San Francisco has all 3 timeouts. Michael Pittman gets the handoff and gets tackled with 1:06 left. San Francisco waits until the clock ticks down to 55 seconds in order to call timeout. You've got to call timeout immediately there if you're the 49ers to give yourself as much time as possible to get the ball back, especially when you have all of your timeouts. Then the Buccaneers score, giving the 49ers the ball back with 42 seconds left. You call timeout for that exact reason. And now, you're just not going to do anything about it? This is like tanking your season so you get the first pick in the draft and have the chance to draft the highly coveted franchise quarterback, and then not doing it. You got what you wanted. The scenario you prepared for happened. Why are you not trying to capitalize on it? Number 3, you might be thinking that maybe the 49ers weren't confident in their ability to score with that field position in that amount of time. I mentioned in my defense of Doug Marrone that when the Jaguars were faced with that situation, Blake Bortles had literally never led such a drive before, so the odds that the offense would have done so here were slim to none, and the gamble wasn't worth it. But the 49ers had pulled this off before. In fact, they pulled it off earlier in the season. In Week 8 against the Cardinals, with 56 seconds left, the 49ers had the ball on their own 20-yard line, up 24-7. After Garrison Hurst picked up 11 yards on the handoff, the 49ers decided to go for it, and try to add some more points to their total. Eventually, Jeff Garcia threw a 61-yard touchdown pass to Terrell Owens to practically put the game out of reach by halftime. I don't think anyone would have blamed the 49ers if they went into the half with a 17-point lead and the ball in the second half. But they went for it, and it worked out. Somewhat similar situation, but in another game that season against the Cowboys, they started at their own 15-yard line with 1:32 left in the half, up by 1 point. Unfortunately, I could not find any footage of this drive, and footage from this game is blocked, so here's some Jeff Garcia highlights from that season. Again, I'm not sure anyone would have blamed San Francisco if they tried running out the clock and going to halftime with a 1-point lead. But they decided to try their luck and get some more points. While they were unsuccessful in the end, they were able to get up to the 37-yard line of Dallas, leading to a 55-yard field goal attempt by Jeff Chandler. A field goal try is all you need in that situation. They drove 48 yards in less than 90 seconds. They've done this before. Jeff Garcia, who had just been nominated to his 3rd straight Pro Bowl, has had his moments in leading San Francisco down the field late with no time left in the half. There was no reason why they couldn't, At the very least, try it here, especially when you're down by 22. And I know Tampa's defense is great. I know they have one of the best defenses of all time and a defense that could score at will. But they're not invincible. In fact, I looked at every drive that Tampa Bay's defense was on the field for where the opposing team was starting between the 20 and the 40 with under 2 minutes left in the first half. 4 of these drives were one play to get into the half, so I took those out. That left 6 drives available to look at, 6 legitimate drives. On those 6 drives, opposing offenses averaged 20 yards. Now Tampa didn't allow any points on those drives, but they allowed yards, and they allowed a few scoring opportunities. 2 of those drives ended in field goal attempts. And with San Francisco's starting field position, there was no reason to believe that they would automatically fail if they tried to do anything. The other thing that has to be taken into account that doesn't show up on the stat sheet is morale. This is a dumb decision unlike any other, because it shows a complete lack of faith in your team. With other dumb decisions I've covered on the channel, as dumb as they were, there was an element of trust involved. With Barry Switzer going for it twice on 4th and 1 from his own 20-yard line, Switzer was saying, "We trust our offense to be good enough to pick up the first down." With Don Coryell trying a 51-yard field goal in the Freezer Bowl, Coryell was saying, "We trust Rolf Benirschke's leg to be strong enough to hit this." Even with Doug Marrone in the AFC Championship, he was saying, "We trust our defense and our team to be good enough to hold on to this 4-point lead." You get what I'm saying. As ill-advised and as stupid as some of these decisions were, I'm not defending some of them in any way. The decision was made because the coach trusted a player or a group of players to do something. Here, Steve Mariucci essentially waved the white flag and said, "We don't trust our offense to do anything." You had the field position. You had a 22-point deficit that, as previously shown, was virtually impossible to come back from. You had talent on your offense. In terms of quarterback, halfback, receiver combos, there weren't too many back in 2002 that were better than Jeff Garcia, Garrison Hurst, and Terrell Owens. And yet you're saying that you don't trust them to score, even though you've done it before, and even though you have nothing to lose. For anyone who was watching this game live at the time, did you think for one moment after this sequence happened that the 49ers had any chance of coming back? Did you think that after Terrell Owens essentially tried to start a mutiny on the field, and rightfully so, that the 49ers were going to rally in the second half? You can never be sure until the clock hits triple zeros in the fourth quarter, but after this moment, you could just tell right away that the 49ers had no shot. If your own coach doesn't believe in you, what does that say? After the game, Steve Mariucci offered an explanation for why he ran out the clock, saying we needed to regroup our offense and our defense. We had to make some adjustments. We had to find out who was healthy. We wanted to get settled down. We knew we would get the ball to start the second half. We chose to make those adjustments. But nobody was buying it. Bucs safety John Lynch said, "I'm not trying to second guess anyone." But after the big running play they had on first down, I guess it did kind of surprise us. It felt like they just wanted to get back into the locker room and regroup. And 49ers quarterback Jeff Garcia said that after we had that first run go for pretty good yardage, I thought we were in a position to work a couple of throws down the field and potentially come away with an attempted field goal. Nobody was buying what Mariucci was selling. And for good reason. So what do we learn from this play? Don't run out the clock when you're down by 22 points and you have good field position. Don't run out the clock when you've got a talented offense who has performed before in these situations. Don't put yourself in an impossible situation to come back from when you don't have to. And as George Michael said, you gotta have faith. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision.